If Haaland and Mbappe play together, how many trophies would they win in one season? Today we're going to be finding that out as we send Mbappe to Manchester City instead of Real Madrid, as Man City plays Arsenal for the Community Shield, giving them an opportunity to not only win their first trophy together, but also to figure out who is better between the two. Because as we all know, there's always a star player of a team, the main guy. So we're going to find out who's going to be the #1 guy in the team to #2. And the way we'll be figuring that out is by finding out who gets the most player of the months for the whole season and who ends with the most goal contributions for the end of the season. Speaking of the end of the season, in order to deem this as a really successful season, they're going to have to win one of the biggest awards that you get at the end of the season, which is the Champions League, meaning that if they don't win that, it's probably a failed season. With all that being said, though, we're only in the beginning of the season with this duo, as their first game trying to win the trophy together in the Community Shield, they would go against Arsenal, as Mbappe would enter into the team not the best, as he wouldn't really have a great performance, but Haaland on the other end would be the reason that Manchester City comes out on top and wins the Community Shield, with Haaland scoring 3 of the best he's made them pay, and he completes the wonderful hat-trick. Now, although it seems to be a success already because they've won their first trophy, it's not looking the best for Mbappe so far, as he had a poor performance in that game, so he's looking to improve in the future, while Haaland should continue in his track. Now, after them winning their first trophy, Mbappe gets a chance to redeem himself, as Man City are going against Sevilla in the Super Cup final to see if they can win their second trophy. As they enter the game for the Super Cup, Mbappe is looking to have a better performance than he did last game, and Haaland is looking to continue, as these two now start looking like they're playing on the same level, as Mbappe would end up scoring 2 goals in this game, and Haaland banging in 1 goal and 2 assists for Manchester City, ultimately defeating Sevilla 5-0, adding 2 trophies to their belt for this season. But then very unexpected things took place, because Man City would go against Burnley in their first game of the Premier League season, and this game had the people thinking, the people were like, wow, because in this game, this is a matchup that is supposed to be easy for Manchester City to start off the season. But it ended up being a very close game, as Haaland would score the first goal for Man City, giving them a 1-goal lead. But then Burnley would find a way to equalize a little bit before halftime. And Manchester City's manager was furious, because we all know that if you want to be able to win the league, it's always good to have a great start. So it's important that they win the first game of the season. As this game would end up getting to the 86th minute, and Burnley's Amudani would end up scoring, giving Burnley the lead, and ultimately ending up being victorious, with Man City losing their first game of the season and first game in the Premier League, which really puts them in a bad spot. But the question is, how can they overcome this? Mbappe and Haaland really have to put on a show for the rest of the season. And with that first loss of the season, it helps us travel all the way to the end of the first half of the season, just before the winter transfer window, to see how well the team is performing so far, to see if this duo is on pace to win every single trophy. And in order to find that out, we have to see how well they're doing in every single competition so far. And a lot of things happened so far. Like in between that time, how many player of the months did either of them get? And what are their goal contributions so far in this season? Well, in the first half of the season, Man City would get into a couple of big games, playing their entire 6 games of the group stage in the UCL. They also played in the Carabao Cup, trying to win that trophy as well. And in the Barclays Premier League, they went on an absolute tear, with Mbappe and Haaland defeating their opponents, with Mbappe getting hat-tricks, Haaland getting hat-tricks as well, both of them getting braces, all of that, ultimately leading them to where they're at now in the first half of the season. As in the Carabao Cup, Manchester City made it to the quarterfinals, absolutely battering Forest Green like it was nothing to them. 7-0 in the quarterfinals, meaning they would have 2 more games to play in the second half of the season. But in terms of the UCL, they had solid performances as well, as Mbappe, in the 6 games they played in the Champions League, he has 9 goals and 4 assists so far in the first half of the season. But Haaland, on the other hand, he has 5 goals and 5 assists in the 6 games they played together so far, primarily leading them to top their group in the group stage, with 5 wins and 1 loss. And speaking of a loss, they took their first loss in the Premier League. So how well did City perform in the Prem after that? Well, let's start with Mbappe. And Mbappe so far in the Premier League would have 19 goals and 18 assists in the 20 appearances, which would make you say, whoa. And that led him to receiving 1 Player of the Month so far. Mbappe took his first Player of the Month in November. But Haaland, on the other hand, he would have solid performances as well, as he would acquire 28 goals and 6 assists in the 20 appearances in the Premier League, which led Haaland to receiving 2 Player of the Month so far. He won in September and October, as Mbappe and Haaland lead their team to the top of the table in the Premier League with 50 points, 16 wins and 2 losses. They only took 1 more loss after that first loss of the season. But with all those performances so far and achievements, wins. All that won't matter if they don't continue with this form. We still got to figure out who is better between them. And by the end of this season, we can see who really won by who ends up getting the Ballon d'Or. And that will all happen in the second half of the end of the season, where we fast forward all the way to the final month of the season to see how well they're performing in their quest to get a lot more silverware. But in between that time, they're still in the UCL and they're still in first place in the Premier League. So the question is, did they win any trophies on their way to the final month of the season? And how well are Mbappe and Haaland performing individually? Well, in order to answer those questions, let's travel back to the month of January as they play against Liverpool in the early stages of the FA Cup. They will have to win 5 more games to win that trophy. And so they do get closer to their goal as Mbappe helps in the booty smacking of Liverpool with a goal that actually helps Haaland-Mbappe get closer to winning their 3rd trophy. But a goal that's actually even closer than the FA Cup for Haaland-Mbappe is them getting close to winning their 3rd trophy in the Carabao Cup as they go up against an overpopulated Chelsea. But City were not overwhelmed as they put Chelsea in their place, defeating them 5-2 in the first game and overall 8-3 on aggregate, putting City in the finals of the Carabao Cup to see if they can ultimately acquire their 3rd trophy so far this season. But that doesn't happen yet as they continue on to the month of February, playing in the FA Cup, getting closer to the final, defeating Bristol City 2-0 and playing many more Premier League games to keep them in the race for the title. As City go on to defeat Brentford easily, eat up Everton like butter on bread 5-0 and defeating Chelsea once again, finally having them play an important game of the round of 16 in the Champions League, which they'll have to win in order for both Mbappe and Haaland to be considered in the Ballon d'Or voting, as that will also help us determine who is better between the two by the end of the season. Which brings us to the first leg of Man City versus Royal Antwerp. And Mbappe would get to dancing with the ball, giving goal scoring opportunities to Haaland, and Haaland would finish the job, scoring 2 goals as City come out with a 4-0 win. Now, although many are happy with that performance, most would consider Antwerp as an easy opponent. But would they say the same thing about Arsenal? As Man City's Mbappe and Haaland go up against Arsenal's Saka and Martin de Odegaard in the Carabao Cup final to see if City can add their 3rd trophy to their cabinet. As De Bruyne would score the first goal of the game, but Saka wanted history to be written differently as he equalizes late, and de Odegaard would follow up with a goal of his own, giving Arsenal the lead in the 74th minute. City would equalize on the assist from Mbappe, but it would all come crashing down as Gabriel Martini would score a parada in the 90th minute to win the trophy for Arsenal, leaving City furious as it poses a few issues and many fans having questions about the era of Man City with Mbappe and Haaland against big teams. And those questions are, is the chemistry between the two of them going to stop them from winning more trophies when it matters, since Mbappe is known for having a strong ego? Or is Haaland's lack of dribbling ability hindering Mbappe and the team as a whole? Anyway, we'll find out the answer to those questions as we head over to the month of March. And on our way there, Man City would defeat Leeds United in the FA Cup, moving to the quarterfinal quite easily. Now that they're in the month of March, they would participate in the Manchester Derby in the Premier League, defeating Man United 3-0 with Mbappe scoring once and Haaland getting a goal and assist, as they also try to answer the questions of the doubters with a victory over a big club in Liverpool, finding a way to get past Van Dijk, in the end defeating Liverpool 4-2. Now, even though that game seemed a little bit difficult, they would head over to the round of 16 in the UCL, and that wouldn't be so difficult at all for them, as they win 8-1 on aggregate in the UCL against Antwerp, meaning that the quarterfinal draw for the UCL is just around the corner. With almost every club standing left in the UCL is a big club, which cities do seem to have some struggles with. But before we see who they get in the quarterfinal of the UCL, we end up in the quarterfinal of the FA Cup, where Man City would go against Watford, with Haaland scoring with the lefty like Messi, then chipping it cheeky like Messi, ultimately leading to a 4-1 victory, moving Haaland-Mbappe and City to the semi-finals of the FA Cup, where things will turn out because Watford did not have the firepower of Man City as they lose 4-1. But you know who does have firepower? Well, that is Arsenal, as Man City would play against them at the end of the month looking for revenge, as they remember losing to them in the Carabao Cup final, as Mbappe would quickly hit him with a finesse like Messi, but Gabe the Jays would answer back for Arsenal. And answering back is exactly what Arsenal would continue to do, as Man City had a 4-2 lead in the 80th minute, but Arsenal managed to score 2, with the last goal being from Saka, making the game result in a draw, showing that Man City is still struggling to defeat big clubs consistently, which takes us over to the month of April, where the UCL draw for the quarterfinals takes place, with the big clubs left, and Man City would end up getting the draw of Arsenal for the quarterfinal of the UCL, which is wild, as these two will meet again. But before we see how that turned out, Mbappe added a Player of the Month to his personal trophy cabinet, as he now ties Haaland with 2 Player of the Month so far in the season. And that there could mean 2 things. Either this can motivate the both of them to play better together for the team, and in the end result in defeating big clubs and winning more trophies. Or that could create them to play more selfish in order to increase their own personal accolades, which can hurt the team overall. But in order to find out the outcomes of those, we end up simulating through the Premier League games in April, which had Man City going on a tear, winning all of their games except one, drawing to Aston Villa, which will matter later on, making them feel not so invincible heading towards their first leg of the UCL quarterfinal against Arsenal. The team City have been struggling against could stop them from receiving another possible trophy. But in the first leg, Man City would take a 2-0 lead early with the efforts of Kylian Mbappe, but then City would hit a stalemate and Arsenal wouldn't, as they come back with Gabriel Martinez scoring the equalizer and taunting Mbappe with his own celebration. Now this beef is brewing in the pot and it's just heating up, as this game would ultimately end in a draw. But the second leg has to be an entirely different story, because only one team can make it out of the quarterfinal. No draws allowed. As Man City heads into the Emirates Stadium, the home of Arsenal, Saka tries to give them the early lead but was denied. But Mbappe, on the other hand, would get a beautiful ball sent into him just for him to easily place that ball into the back of the net. The game would be 1-0 for a while until Erling Haaland would give City a 2-goal cushion while taunting Gabriel Martinez with Mbappe's celebration, showing that the chemistry between the two may not be so bad after all, allowing City to advance to the semi-finals of the Champions League. But in order to prove that the chemistry isn't so bad, they have to win more trophies, which is something they're getting close to doing, as they face off against Manchester United in the semis of the FA Cup, as Maximilian Grealish is looking to get revenge as Man City chose Mbappe over him. But Haaland says, "Don't worry," and dunks the ball like LeBron James, giving City the lead. But then something even crazy would happen, as Haaland flies like an eagle, scoring another header. But then Man United would fight back with Anthony scoring a crazy power shot, but it wasn't enough, as City would get closer to another trophy, being in the finals of the FA Cup. And speaking of finals, the most important finals Haaland is trying to get in is the Champions League, and Bayern Munich are in the way of that, as this semi-finals matchup would be very tough for Manchester City, as they go down in the first leg, conceding a goal from Harry Kane scoring a finesse like Messi, and then Coquette scoring the game winner for them, resulting in a 3-2 loss in the last game of April. And although it's a sad loss where everyone should be feeling down, one player may not be feeling as bad, as Haaland would receive his third player of the month in the month of April, heading into May, giving him a 3-2 lead over Mbappe in the player of the month race. So the question is, can Mbappe make the comeback, and who will also win the goal contribution race? As we know, it's pretty close from the last time we checked. Well, we will figure out that later, as Man City continues to take the Premier League by storm, with Haaland and Mbappe being major contributors to that, as they lift the Premier League trophy, finishing the season with 100 points, and it's Mbappe winning the player of the month in the month of May, which is amazing, as Mbappe and Haaland are looking to have an amazing performance against Bayern as they face off for the semi-finals in the second leg of the UCL, just for the game to be absolutely surprising, with City going to Bayern's home and Mbappe giving City the goal to tie it 3-3 on aggregate. City were fighting to take this lead, but Emmanuel Neuer was having the game of his life. But even though Neuer was having the game of his life, making crazy saves, it wasn't enough, as the Sonic-fied turtle Mbappe would score a late 85th minute finesse like Messi, ultimately leading City to advance to the finals of the Champions League, which is officially against Manchester United. Yes, a UCL derby final. Whoa! But before we see that final, Haaland had another final to take care of, as they play Aston Villa in the FA Cup final, and Haaland would continue from where Mbappe left off, and he would score the first 2 goals of the game, giving Villa no breathing room. Then Doku would get an opportunity and get fouled for the penalty, and Mbappe would finish the job, giving City the 3-0 lead. Long story short, City would end up lifting the FA Cup trophy, winning the game 4-0, celebrating with smiles across their faces. But all those smiles can turn upside down if they don't reach their main goal, and that's winning the Champions League. So both teams enter into the Wembley Stadium, with City having a chance to win a treble and Manchester United trying to ruin it. So in the 27th minute, Mbappe would score a finesse like Messi, giving Onana not a single chance, then scoring another, giving City a 2-goal lead in the final. And this game looked like it was out of reach for Manchester United, until Haaland would score another, making it look even worse. But then Bruno Fernandes would bring hope for the United fans, as he scores an absolute zinger into the back of the net. But City kept on playing absolutely aggressive with a winner mentality, and that was too much for Manchester United, as Manchester City comes out victorious, lifting up the trophy and winning the Champions League to ultimately secure the treble, which would result in them celebrating their treble in in their parade. But a lot of people are still curious on who will win the Ballon d'Or. But before we find out who wins that, who finished with the most goal contributions at the end of the season? Well, Haaland finished with 74 goals and 26 assists in 64 games, with a total of 100 goal contribution. And Mbappe, on the other hand, would finish with 62 goals and 41 assists in 64 games, giving Mbappe the goal contributions lead. But the real winner is the biggest individual award. So who won that? Well, first, Mbappe actually got the Premier League Player of the Season award. But that doesn't mean that he'll win the Ballon d'Or. As we enter into the ceremony, the winner of the Ballon d'Or is Kylian Mbappe! Mbappe wins the Ballon d'Or. Hope you enjoyed the video. But I think you'll also enjoy Africa being in the Premier League. Find out what happened in this video. Adios.